you've been watching our content recently, you've probably seen an uptick in long-range shooting content. Shooting .308 guns, DMRs, bolt guns, and in a video I just produced recently, I was taking you guys through the journey that I've had for the last 2 years of getting into precision shooting, getting into shooting a little bit further than just the standard AR-15 carbine stuff I've been doing for 10 years, and just walking you guys through the process. People have been asking, hey, can I take my standard AR-15, put a scope on there, and start doing long range or precision type drills and build a Mark 12 SPR type gun? And the answer is you absolutely can. But there's a couple things that I actually want to talk about in this video, and we are going to be comparing a standard SPR type setup rifle, a specialized, accurized AR-15 chambered in 5.56 with a nice magnified optic, and compare that to your standard AR-15 builds that a lot of people are running around with today with an LPVO and with an ACOG, and we're actually going to see how those guns compare against each other for a series of drills. But before we actually get into that, we have to talk about a couple things. So first off, the term SPR, which many of you are familiar with, does not stand for Special Purpose Rifle. It stands for Special Purpose Receiver. It was a concept in the military during the early days of GWAT to get guys a more accurized upper that they could drop onto their standard M4A1 lower so that they could shoot a little bit further in Afghanistan and a few other places. And typically it would come with, per the contract, some sort of more magnified optic than the standard ACOG or magnifier combo that a lot of guys had. And so they'd have like a loophole something, a 2-to-10, something like that. And that's what they had. And there's a lot of civilians out there who are mimicking these builds from the early GWAT era, calling them SPRs, but the really fun thing is, as civilians, we can build whatever we want. We don't have to be constrained by specific military contract requirements or specific like budgeting legislation things that are going on behind the scenes that is restricting guys in the military from acquiring certain types of equipment. We can go out, and as long as funds allow, we can go build whatever we want. Is it a 13.9 rifle with a suppressor and a 5-to-25 scope? Is it a weird 300 blackout gun with an ACOG with a BDC in there because it's a weird sort of specialized type of a gun? We can do whatever we want. But for the sake of this video, we have built out two standardized sort of rifles that you will generally see in classes being used for longer range sort of precision shooting as a 5.56 gun, and then I have a standard gun over here. But the first thing and the first misconception I want to talk about, and I know there's going to be comments in here, people saying, you don't need a gun like this, as long as this, with a scope that is 2-to-20 scope, to shoot targets at 600 meters. And to some extent, they're not wrong. You can shoot with a red dot or even iron sights on a perfectly contrasted target downrange against a nice berm with the right lighting, proned out, and you can get hits on that target. Now the question is, how many shots are you actually firing to guarantee a hit? As an example, I have shot an MP5 out to 300 meters. I was not getting one-for-one shots on that man-sized silhouette target in the prone with no time constraints in a sterile environment. It took around 20 rounds to even get somewhere in the ballpark of where I need to hold in relation to the target, because it's 9 mil out of like a 10 MOA gun. And then being a 10 MOA gun, at 100 yards, 100 meters, that means there's a 30-inch circle around the target that the bullet can land anywhere inside of that outside of my shooting ability. And then take into consideration environmental factors, wind, the accuracy of the actual ammunition itself, the velocity it's coming out of the gun, as it deviates. There's just a lot of factors that are very hard to control. So in the process of me shooting a target at 300 meters with a submachine gun, I only probably had 5 hits. But I can say I've technically shot a target at 300 meters with an MP5, but that really isn't true. The reason people are building guns like this, and the reason we have set up guns like this, Brandon and myself, is to have a platform that we can get guaranteed hits at specific distances on specific types of targets. If you have a rifle with just a red dot on a magnifier, yes, you will be able to shoot man-sized targets. Yes, under the right conditions, you'll be able to have very good marksmanship capability on specific targets with certain engagements. But when it comes to shooting at speed, shooting targets that maybe aren't very well contrasted, shooting a headplate target at 400 meters, shooting with different environmental factors, I can't necessarily guarantee a hit with a rifle like this that I can do with a rifle that is more purposefully set up with a more accurized barrel with a more, longer, higher magnification scope, and with better ammunition. So that is why these guns exist. It's why people are building these, and it's something that's very important to understand. You're going to see in this video that we shoot these rifles, our standard M4 AR builds, out to 600 meters plus, and we do get some hits on smaller targets, but are we going to be able to do that as consistently with a rifle like this, on demand, on a timer, while we're comparing these guns compared to an SPR like this guy right here? Let's find out. But before we do, let's actually get into the details on these guns.
Another thing we want to consider is what is our max effective range of our rifles, or what is your desired max effective range? So when it comes to 5.56 specifically, and other rounds, but 5.56 is what we're talking about in this video, is your max effective range is actually be determined mostly by your barrel length. So what your barrel length is going to give you is more velocity, and what 5.56 needs to achieve terminal ballistics is high velocity. Terminal ballistics matters because it is actually how good your rifle is at actually killing people, not just hitting targets. So yes, you can get shorter guns to reach out and hit targets at farther distances. And obviously especially 5.56 with environmentals and wind, as velocity gets lower on your rifle, you're going to get more inconsistency with your accuracy, but you're also going to get way less terminal ballistics with the round. So yes, I can take a 10.3 with match grade ammunition and a good barrel and touch targets out to 800 meters, but it's not going to be all that effective of actually stopping human beings. So when it comes to these guns, we're going to have longer barrels, not only for consistency with accuracy, with having higher velocity, but that higher velocity is going to get us more terminal ballistics, as in more stopping power with our rounds. So my GPR setup, what we got going on is a 14.5. So when it comes down to the 14.5 inch barrel, I'm actually setting up my optics around what is the max effective range of this rifle. So generally speaking, I'm actually shooting 62 grain out of this gun. So it's kind of like, your standard ammunition for guns in this range. I'm looking between 400 to 500 meters for my max effective range. So, and that's relating to terminal ballistics, not my ability to hit targets. So with this guy, an ACOG is definitely suffice for that target range. Now, when we start stretching it out, you're gonna see that this gun's not gonna be able to keep up with the more precision guns. And other than that, it's just laser light, nothing crazy going on here. And I do have a nice Geisley 2-stage trigger in here. For my SPR setup, we have another BCM. This is an 18-inch BCM Mark 12-ish. So I assembled this upper, but it is all BCM parts. So BCM upper receiver, 18-inch stainless steel barrel, the new Raider rail, and then a BCM bolt. So you can see that there's a lot more going on with this gun. Do have a laser and light setup on here, have it kind of out of the way of the optic. But for the optic, we have a 4-16 ATAC R. So obviously a lot more horsepower going on with the optic when it comes to magnification and just glass clarity and whatnot. Got a top mounted P2 if I do need to shoot up close. Got the capability to go bipod if I need to. I also have an anti-cant device on it. And this gun's shooting 69 grain Federal Sierra Match King ammunition. So we're getting really good accuracy out of this. So obviously with the 18-inch barrel, like we've already been talking about, this is going to get more consistent hits at distance, but it's also going to give us that better terminal velocity at longer distances. So this gun, with this type of barrel length and this ammo, I'm looking between 700 to 800 meters of good terminal ballistics.
So my rifle setups are very similar to Brandon's. Over here, I have my standard Instagram GPR, fully kitted, every accessory known to man. Except for a clip-on thermal unit, a flow-through suppressor, so I'm missing a couple little items. But that is a trend that I've seen recently from a lot of folks, is they build out these 13.9 rifles. It's a Sons of Liberty gun, it's a custom, or it's a URGI type rifle, and then they just layer every accessory on it possible because they think it can be like the jack of all trades, and it's definitely not the master of anything. Yes, you may have the capability to shoot a little bit further than if you have something like an ACOG or a red dot with a magnifier running an offset above or on the side, but that is just going to be a slower rifle shooting up close. It's larger than something that is built to be dedicated for CQB or close range shooting. So one of the tests we're going to be doing with both of these guns together is going to be shooting a drill up close. Hit factor scoring, so running offset dots on each of these and just seeing what happens. This gun will probably shoot faster than this just because it is lighter. But if I had an 11.5 BCM or even a 14.5 BCM with just a red dot on it, I would smoke both of these guns. Like, I already know that just from shooting a whole lot. But with that said, This gun does have a lot of capability at being able to shoot far, like pretty decently, and I can shoot it up close also fairly decently. I have a laser for night vision if I'm running nods, a white light so I can see what I'm doing. I can add a bipod if I want. I will not actually be shooting with a bipod today because that's how most people are not shooting a gun like this. And for the most part, it can do most of the things decently well. I will say though, if you are interested in building a rifle that does everything, I don't necessarily think that's a good way to go about it. I think you will have a much better setup or more optimized setup if you actually build specific guns for specific tasks. For example, a short range gun that's got a red dot, and then maybe a gun like this, and you actually skip this gun in the middle entirely. But that's something you guys get to figure out. But on this rifle, I have the Night Force Attacker 1-8. I've got a 13.9 Criterion barrel. With the groups that we shot on Tuesday for prep, this gun really favored the 69 grain Federal Premium. We had 2 ammos to choose from. We're not doing a crazy like ammo test right now. So Black Hill 77 grain Mark 262 civilian clone ammo, and then the Federal 69 grain. And this gun preferred the 69 grain for sure. Just as far as grouping goes, velocity, it was just much more consistent with that ammunition. So this gun's shooting that. The trigger, I'm actually not running like a fancy precision trigger. I actually really like the ALG ACT. So that's what I have in here, and it was doing fine on Tuesday. So I was like, all right, I'm not gonna, change the trigger out. So that's kind of how this is set up. Over here, we have a more sort of traditional SPR build. This is a Munition Works custom upper receiver. So it's got an 18-inch Ballistic Advantage fluted stainless barrel. He just has it coated with the Cerakote color that he's doing. And this was like 0.49 MOA when he tested it in the factory or in his shop. So that was really cool. We got that in, had an A2 birdcage. Threw a suppressor on here, the Surefire RC2, and then in the process of checking both these ammunitions, it preferred the 77 grain as far as velocity and accuracy went, and this gun is definitely shooting sub MOA. Just with the hasty groups I was shooting with a lot of Mirage, this gun was good to go. This one was like 1.1, 1.2. If I shot it a little more smoother, didn't have as much Mirage downrange, I'm sure I could get this down to at least 1 MOA, and that is good enough for a gun like this. And this being sub MOA at 0.6, 0.7, something like that, with a 10-shot group, that's going to be perfectly acceptable. Night Force 2-20, this is where some people are going to say that's too much scope for this gun. This is a 5.56 rifle. Well, I have so much glass. Well, most of the time I'm actually shooting this gun on 12x, 14x. I'm not going all the way to 20. That way I can just have maximum glass clarity when I am engaging targets. If I need to punch up to 20 or punch to 18 or so to identify a target at distance, I can do that. But most of the time, I'm not even touching magnification. I set it at like 14 or so. I'm going to be setting parallax on, depending on the targets and the engagement that I'm shooting. I could see plenty of information in my Christmas tree reticle for holding if I'm not dialing or using speed drop or max point blank range. And then I'll be good to go. I'll be fine. So this scope is my favorite by far. Like if there was one scope that I had to have for the rest of my life, right now, with the information that I have, the experience that I have shooting different scopes, it'd be this one right here. I can put this on a 5.56 gun. I can put this on a 6.5, a 308. I've shot this scope out to a mile on a different gun. I could put it on a bolt gun. Like this scope could do a lot of different things, and it's just a very enjoyable experience. Delta Point Pro for the offset, same as this one, using R mount, raised up, so it's at the same sort of height as the scope, so I can roll into it easily, and I can use night vision with it if I absolutely had to. This gun is going to be using an anti-cant device, which is this little electronic level right here. Highly recommended, no matter really what kind of gun you're putting it on. But a 5.56 gun, shooting out to 500-600 meters, any slight adjustment in cant for the rifle is just going to affect that round even more than, say, like 6.5 shooting out to 500, 600 meters. So if you are building a gun like this, I highly recommend you get a bubble level, or in this case, this is the MDT electronic level. It's just a little bit faster. You can see it at night if you're shooting with like a clip-on or something. Definitely add one of those. I think Brandon has one on his gun. We're not using them on these guns because usually people don't have bubble levels on these. You might want to consider throwing one on here. It will be a little bit of weight. Bipod, I've got an MDT giant bipod, definitely makes a very big difference. As far as a little bit of recoil management when you are shooting in position with this, and it's just much more adjustable, although it is quite expensive. But this upper is like $1,100. So it's a little over $1,000. This is nothing crazy and wild. Some of the accessories on there are, but that's usually the name of the game when you're getting into long range and precision shooting. You'll spend much more on the scope than the actual gun itself, which in this case, absolutely true. The suppressor costs more than the upper, but that is just what it takes sometimes to build a gun that is consistent, that allows us to choose a target at a certain distance from a certain position and have a guaranteed hit at that specific distance. But with all that said, let's actually go and begin the first test. Impact. Impact. Target. Minivan. Is that a hit?
No, I'm not seeing it.
Engaging gaunt.
Yeah, impact on gone.
All right, one more on steel.
Impact.
All right, far. Is that a hit?
Nope.
Transitioning to gong.
Okay.
Need one more on steel.
Impact.
Woo!
Happening.
What is happening?
It just-
Wind! Wind is what's happening. A little bit of wind. Impact! 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 Go on! Impact! Impact! Two 42. Silhouette first.
Got it.
Going into gong.
Okay. Impact. Impact.
Going gong first, next position.
Impact. Impact.
I think I had an extra.
62.
Did I have an extra impact in there on the big boy?
No. I can't see it hit the steel.
Oh, you can't?
I can, like, if I can see it, like, knock off the light, but there's
Okay.
like no impact. 62 seconds.
Yes! I was hoping for 7. Impact! Impact! Impact!
Way left.
Impact! 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 Time 2:01.
I was holding way left on all those.
Holding, or was it the wind?
I can tell you. I just know I'm holding left.
All right, so that was the first course of fire. Just a very simple single position, back of a truck, so it's got a little bit of movement. We had 3 different ranges that we were engaging. At each position, we had a full C-zone size target, so it's not even like a full E silhouette, full like USPSA target with a D zone. And then at each position, we had a head plate gong. I think at the far target, which was 560. It's a 10-inch steel, something like that.
10-inch.
And then it's 8-inch at the minivan, and then it's a 6, I think, at the 450. So 450 meters, 506, and then I think it was 560 for the far. Times with my SPR, I was able to shoot in around 62 seconds. And then with my attacker gun, with the 1-8, that I was not dialing, I was holding, I was dialing on my SPR, I shot that in a 1:48. So it was about twice as long shooting it with the attacker. It was hard to see splash and misses. That's the main difference between that optic and my 2-20, where I was shooting on 14 power. I could actually see splash in the dirt when I needed to, and then make corrections if need be, which I didn't have to do too much of, which was nice. How'd it go for you?
So it started with the ACOG. The ACOG, it's just got a BDC in it, and I can't really see. I couldn't see half the target, so I can see the gongs just fine because they're just bright white. It's not, it really have to do with the size. But so I didn't even finish the drill. It was like 248, and I just ran out of ammo.
Yep, 242.
I could not hit the man-sized steel at, it was 580 meters
580.
final, and I just couldn't see it. It was my crosshair was bigger than the target, so.
And in that case, we had our man-sized targets were against foliage and trees, so we didn't have dirt to catch splash. So again, that's, you could shoot a high contrast target like a gong or a silhouette against dirt and see splash, but when you have a target that's got trees immediately behind it, I mean, sometimes you can see a branch fall off in the back, but you're not going to see that with the ACOG at this distance. You're not going to see that with the 1-8. You're going to need something like the 2-20 or the 4-16. How was the 4-16?
It was good. I was just holding way left, so I don't know if it was the wind or what, but I was holding probably almost 0.3 or 0.4 mils left of every target I was hitting. So, and I was just kind of learning that as I went. So I just took some trial and error at the van, and then when I got to the 580, it was pretty good.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, and the time for that was 2:01 or 2 minutes right at.
Yeah.
For that gun, and you dialed on every target.
Dialed every target.
Yeah. Yep. So cool stuff. All right, now for the next. Two in the shoulders and set it. See what happens. All right, so for this next test, we shot a target at 360 meters, just one of our standard USPSA targets, but we covered it up with this M81 top. We also positioned it kind of in the shade of the trees back there, and it was difficult to see. Thankfully, with the two optic setups that I had, the 942-220 and the Attacker, I was able to still pinpoint this, mainly because of the head box that stuck up over the actual target. But looking at this, it is hard to find a specific place to visualize where the A zone might be and engage accurately. So we did it at 360. We could have pushed a little bit further, but that was a reasonable distance. I actually shot better with the Attacker. All 10 are in. Looks like I've got 2 deltas on the edge. Everything else is Alpha Charlie, and I shot it in under a minute in 53 seconds. And then with my SPR, I actually shot it worse, which is fascinating. It's probably due to parallax. I didn't really set my parallax or care too much about it. I was just thinking more about the drill, and that's not great. But I've got one mic, and everything is trending to the right. Also could have been the wind picking up, and I did do a wind check recently. It's like 230. It's not quite a full value wind. At that distance, it will be pushing my round between 0.4 and 0.6 mils. I was trying not to worry about that too much and just shoot the gun, and I think that might have been what destroyed me on that. Brandon, how did you do with, you had the ACOG, so you had the lowest magnified optic.
Yeah.
How was that?
So the ACOG, I dropped 3. I kind of just held bottom of the chevron on his head. It was kind of the best aiming reference for this. It was really, really difficult to see this guy. But overall, this is actually not too bad for an ACOG shooting at 360 meters on a target you can't really see. The SPR, really good.
Crushed. Yeah.
Yeah, I crushed this guy. I did have a mic. I called it when I shot it.
Was it on the side of the
Yeah, it was the bottom.
Bottom, yep.
Bottom, actually. This shot was on the bottom, and then that mic was. But this is a 4-inch group at 360 meters, shooting on a covered up target. So I shot that on 13 power. Okay. What I did do is I dialed 0.2 to the left after our last stage because all of my shots were turning right, and I think that was a pretty solid adjustment. Probably go 0.1 more.
It looks like it. You also might have been fighting some of the wind with that. Yeah, I shot mine on 9X. I probably could have gone up a little bit, although on that target at that range, I don't think that would have helped. So you shot on 13, I shot on 9, and that's what it looked like. Now for a close range drill. No! Oh, the dot was all over the place. So we just finished shooting our 50-round carbine course of fire that is on our website. You can go to our site, you can look at the schematics, how the drill is set up. It's a 7-string course of fire consisting of shots at the 5-meter line and going all the way back to 25. So if you have an outdoor range with a decent bay, you can run this drill, and lots of people do. We have 3 open USPSA targets that are 5 meters apart. So when we get back to the 10-meter, our transition is pretty wide. We're not shooting like 3 targets right next to each other. So this is a great place to show that there is there's a pretty stark difference, or a good difference, between something like those SPRs that are weighing, I think mine's like 16 pounds, 15 pounds, something like that.
Up there, yeah.
Compared to these guns that weigh, this is probably 9.5 and yours is probably 9.
This is a feather.
Yeah,
this weighs nothing.
Something. This may actually be closer to 10. We'll weigh them and find out. But with the SPRs, when we first shot, we're using hit factor scoring. So it's essentially certain zones on the targets will generate points. We then divide our total time, all 7 strings that are shot, which my total time, it's usually around 35 to 40 seconds. You then divide that by the amount of points you generated for your hit factor. It's essentially how many points you're generating per second, kind of like in a first-person shooter game. You know, how much damage are you dealing per second? You know, it's very similar. So I had a hit factor of 5.48 for shooting my SPR.
Psych! That's the wrong number!
Oh no! Oh no!
Just for comparison, when I'm shooting this with a normal AR of some sort with a red dot, I'm shooting this in the high 6s, 6.8, 6.9. I know I've shot over a 7 at least once with a raced out gun, but high 6s is pretty normal. Brandon, you shot this in a 4.69 with your SPR.
Yeah, the hits weren't all too bad with the SPR.
It's just time.
It's just the time. So your time was 39 seconds, mine was 45. That was the big difference. There's only a 4-point difference between the 2 of us. It was just being able to move the gun
rapidly between targets and stuff. Yeah. When we transitioned over to our standard carbines, standard, you know, ARs, you know, 14.5, 13.9, all that, I got up to a 602 for my hit factor. So that's pretty good. Like, I'm somewhat happy with that. If I'd had a red dot, it probably would have been, or like a standard red dot, not like an offset or something. Maybe a little bit lighter gun, but a 602, I'm very happy with that. I did have Delta and I think a mic. No, that was with the SPR. Charlie's were decent, and then you had a 536 for your run. So better than your 469, and I had a 602, which was better than my 548. Any comments shooting with the top dot?
Yeah, top dots, I'm just not a fan of them. So I could, if I practice with them quite a bit, I can get pretty used to them, but coming out here, I haven't shot this like dynamically in a while, so had poor stock placement, you'll see on one shot. So it was just a little inconsistent get behind it, that's all.
Yep.
So I'm normally mid 6s, high 6s with my guns.
Yep. Offset, I do prefer offset dots simply because you can be a little bit more locked into the gun versus floating your head up higher. With practice, you can shoot a top dot, you know, fairly well. I mean, obviously better than the ACOG up close. But I do prefer generally offsets when I can, so.
Yeah, this is still my favorite optic setup. It just takes like time getting back used to it. It's literally twice as height of an ACOG or a normal optic. So
standard dot. So yeah, so that's our close range drill. We've got another long range drill set up that's going to be pretty intensive, and we are going to be hitting that tomorrow. Before we get into this next drill, which is going to be a doozy, it's going to be quite long, but also going to show us exactly what these guns are doing. I want to show you guys the chest rig that we've been running for the last few days. This is the new T.REX Arms TRAAPs. It is essentially a modernized TAPS rig with a bunch of different features that are built into it. But the way that I have mine configured is for everything that we are doing right now. So I can run 4 mags in the front with all of my precision ammo for whichever rifle that I'm using. I've typically been using these front 3 pouches and then running a magnifier or a laser rangefinder in this one because we're not running weapon mounted rangefinders. Kestrel on this side because I am getting into that and using it here and there, building out cards for some of the different drills that we've been shooting. And temperature checks, even wind. We've been getting more wind than I originally thought we would be getting. But this chest rig has MOLLE all throughout the front, so you can add whatever pouches that you want. I've kept the front pretty slick, so I just have my 2 accessory pouches on the side, multi-tool, Kestrel, and then on this side, I actually have my laser rangefinder because I'm running full mags in the front, Wallaby pouch that I can drop stuff into, gloves, and in this case, we're going to be retaining our magazines on this next drill, so actually throwing our mags in there is going to be pretty important. But this rig's pretty cool because it has a lot of different features that are cooked into the rig. So we have internal accessory pouches on the inside of the chest rig that are You know, it's very similar to our quad flap chest rig. So I have a little balaclava thing on this side. On this side I have nothing because I don't need anything there right now. A generous loop field on the back so you can attach your various dangler pouches. So if you had a bunch of extra long range equipment, you could run something there. In this case, I just have a dump pouch and then a large admin pouch on the inside. And that's where I've been keeping my other dope card for my other gun. I'm just throwing on a different sleeve because it's easier. My phone because music and other stuff, and then a notebook that I'm using for tracking just stuff as we go along. But this rig can be worn as a standard chest rig. You can also throw it onto a plate carrier. And the nice thing is, because there is Velcro in the front of the actual chest rig itself, you can actually wear this with a plate carrier and run the cummerbund on top, and it pulls nice and tight. And then you can have 6 magazines. There are mag pouches here on the sides, which you can also use as radio pouches for running your radio if that's something that you want to do. So this is how I have mine configured for everything that we're doing right now. Got a med kit on the side, and it's been working great.
My chest rig is set up with the same intent as Lucas's. So we're out here, you know, doing the SPR versus GPR thing, and that's kind of what the intent of this chest rig is set up for. So I do have a couple extra things going on here. So I have a upside down MIP pouch, or medium item pouch, and this can fit a majority of smoke grenades. So on a chest rig like this is kind of exactly how I used to run things when I was in the service. So I'm kind of just replicating it just slightly. So always had a smoke grenade, at least one smoke grenade on the front here. It's upside down just because it's easier to pull out. And then I'm using one of the accessory pouches for a radio, and it's hooked into the push-to-talk's hooked into our chest rig. So we got 6 mags going across. Now, one thing to note about the accessory pouches here on the side, you have a spot for a 5.56 pouch. Now this pouch is a little bit bigger than the front 4, so you can fit something bigger in there. And then you have another pouch behind it that is around the same size. So what you can do is you can actually double stack 5.56 pouches here, or 5.56 magazines here. You can actually put 3 between these 2 pouches, so you can have a lot of ammunition. Now, if you do a radio, you're only going to be able to fit one 5.56 pouch, but just something to note there. So if you have, you know, a medical pullout or something like that, that could be a good idea to put on one of the sides. But I got a radio on one side, tourniquet on the other, running 6 5.56 pouches, and then I have a GP pouch. And my GP pouch, big things to note: laser rangefinder. This is very important for us out here today. Another big thing that's really important for us is our magneto speed. So these are essentially very essential for especially precision guns. And if you're just shooting a high round count, these things will extend the barrel life of your gun if you use these properly 2 to 3 times. So we keep this on our bodies basically all the time now. Sometimes we even have 2 of them on us. And then I have 2 of our lip pouches, one with a 9mm pouch, one for the Kestrel. Nothing crazy going on there. And then I have our Velcro GP pouch, but I cut off the Velcro. That gave me 1 extra row of MOLLE here. So all of this takes up the entire chest rig here. Wallaby pouch for the same reason as Lucas, and I have my bag hanging off a carabiner, just looped into a row of MOLLE here. And then I have our hydro pouch, but I'm using it for just water bottles and not canteen. So I can fit 2 in here. I can actually stuff 3 water bottles if I try hard enough, but generally I just have 1 in there. And then Wallaby pouch, like I said, just for retaining the random stuff. Now we do have the zipper admin pouch on the back here, not using it for anything currently. So generally what I would use this pouch for is equipment that I don't necessarily need to get to, but is kind of an emergency type thing. So stuff I need, but hopefully I don't want to ever have to use. So basically survival equipment. So, and just because it's kind of hard to get to with how this pouch is up against your body. But that's how my rig set up for this training day.
It's a surprise tool that'll help us later. 5.2.
Impact.
Haha, knew it!
Impact. 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 Impact.
Woo. Heck yeah!
317.
Woo!
Not too bad.
Go!
Yep, close first.
Impact!
That one was way better than I thought.
Impact! Impact! If you are finished, give me your time.
I missed these targets.
All right, we'll just add time.
305. Impact.
Oh, get in there. I got this. A lot of wind down there. I'm out. What? Impact! Impact!
What's that?
Wrong steel, you hit left. C-zone. Big boy. That was big steel.
Oh, I'm hitting gong. Crap.
Impact!
I was aiming at that.
That would explain it.
Idiot. Come on. I didn't even see impacts.
Move on if you want.
See him.
Impact! You're way right.
Doesn't make any sense.
Impact! Impact! Impact!
Done. I don't know what's going on.
All right, so that drill was something else. And frankly, going into it, I figured the SPRs would win simply because we are shooting very small targets like the KYL rack at 180 meters and then shooting some gongs at various distances. But it so turned out that our two little infantry carbines, one with the 1-8 and then one with the ACOG, were actually bodying these guns. There was a few reasons for that. One was when we shot those guns, there was no wind, and now we are starting to get enough wind that even with my rifle shooting out to 300 meters is going to be 0.5 off by half a mil on one side or the other. And we're actually getting the wind switching back and forth, which is super fun. I've never really noticed this because I didn't really pay attention to the wind earlier. So there's that environmental factor that we have, but there's also just the idea that this is a much heavier gun. It's a little bit slower maneuvering between each position as I'm moving through, managing a bag to get into certain positions and shoot a little more stably. But I was getting more consistent hits with this once I got into a position, once I was properly set up, checked level, made sure I was good to go. And then at the end, I was hoping to clean house and I ran out of ammo because I didn't actually top my mags off like a moron. But I still would have shot this a little bit slower in raw time compared to my Attacker 13.9 gun that I was just blitzing this drill with. So I thought that was pretty interesting. What did you think?
Yeah, same thing. So at the truck, it was kind of a guessing game with the ACOG, to be honest. This was, it was spot on. And when we got up here, I had a poor position on the roof. And then my mistake here was I dialed 1.3 instead of 0.3. So it was me, to say the least. But yeah, this gun is very heavy. So just doing that little target transition, it was taking a little bit just to keep that gun up. But yeah, then just managing magazines, having to reload with such a heavy gun, and then with the bag, it's a little bit slower. But once you do get in position, that's what these guns are good at. They're consistent. So
yeah,
and
we saw that on the first drill on the roof. When we're in a stack position, not running around, these guns absolutely destroy the ACOG gun and the LPVO gun. I will say a time hack that I realized after I ran it was, instead of dinking around, putting the bag here, and then running, but would be just to hold the bag and just shoot everything like this, and then get to the roof, use the bag, shoot, get to the designated target, drop the bag, shoot, or keep holding it. And that would have saved me probably 10 seconds, and that would have saved you probably 15-ish.
Yeah, I didn't use the bag on the roof.
Didn't use the bag on the roof. Probably could have gone a little faster with it for sure. So anyway, just some interesting things. But now we're going to shoot a confidence drill on a hostage taker head plate at a specific distance with each gun. And let's see what happens when we do something a little bit, shoot something very small, something low percentage. Hostage shot.
Linked it again.
Oh, that should have been a hit. All right, so we just completed our confidence drill. This was shooting a hostage taker little head plate that could spin around a C-zone steel. I want to say it's like 4x4 or 4.5 by 4.5. It is not a 5x5. That thing is tiny. And we're here at 205 meters, which would be like 220 yards. And the purpose for this drill is, we have rifle in hand, whether it's our standard carbine or our precision gun. We're looking at the target, we're looking where we want to be, we're looking where we want to position the rifle. We get into a stable or as stable prone position as we can while still staring at the target. And as we drop into the scope, it should be there. So this is a great drill for building fundamentals of building a position on a single target. And then we're taking a single shot into the head plate. So I already knew going into this that these guns were gonna doink and just absolutely crush a drill like this, because that's what these guns are for, compared to these other guns. So the scores for both guns, for the first gun that I shot, my URGI with the attacker, and I was holding, I didn't dial on it. If I had dialed, it would have been a 0.6 dial for that shot. I had 4 hits, 2 hostage taker hits, so hitting the actual body of the target, and 4 misses. And then Brandon had 5 hits on the plate, 1 hostage hit, and 4 misses with the ACOG. Once we transitioned over to the SPRs, it was a completely different story. I had 9 hits, 1 miss, no hostage shots, and then Brandon had 9 hits and 1 miss with no hostage shots either. And the really fun part for me was on the last 4 target exposures for engaging, the steel wasn't even fully presented. It was like 2/3 back, so I'm shooting essentially a 3-inch square, and I was still able to get hits. But that is when I dropped my second to last shot, was on that 2/3 exposure, because I shot it like a wuss, and I held too far to the right, because I really didn't want a hostage shot there at the end after doing so well. So these guns absolutely crushed. What was it like shooting the ACOG on this?
I mean, the ACOG's been crushing all day.
It has.
But so the chevron, I have a chevron T82, is bigger than the head plate that we're shooting at. So I'm putting like the tip, half of the chevron, trying to put it above it. With all the Mirage, it's just like a tip of a chevron wobbling around. So it was kind of a guessing game. And plus, we're not using a bag or a bipod with those guns.
Yep.
So it was difficult, but somewhat doable, just not consistent.
Yeah, so I was shooting my carbine the way most people are shooting their carbines, just mag potted. For those of you that are gonna say it wasn't a fair test because you used bags for the SPR and you didn't use bags for the carbine, that's an excellent point. Maybe you should carry a bag for your carbine because yes, it makes a huge difference. But we were shooting our carbines like we normally would in the prone, without a bag, without a bipod, without anything. And we just got more consistency out of our precision 5.56 guns that are made for this sort of thing over our standard infantry guns. So that's pretty cool. Well, let's wrap it up.
One of the things I think we demonstrated in this video is that there's a number of differences between GPRs and SPRs. Now I do see a lot of people out there, they're putting these big magnified optics, not this ACOG, but maybe that 4-16 ATACR or that 2.5-20 Night Force on smaller guns like 13.9s and 14.5s, and they think they have an SPR. Now, part of that is somewhat true. They do have a semi-precision rifle is what I'll call it. They have maybe they'll have a precision barrel like a Criterion Core, or what's that? They barely have in your 425. A proof barrel, something like that, and they're shooting precision ammo, and they're getting good hits on targets. They're getting, sub-MOA guns and whatnot. But that gives you an SPR on the flat range. That doesn't give you an SPR, for what I'm gonna say, killing people. So something that the 18-inch guns are gonna do really well is they give you that terminal ballistics like we talked about earlier, out to further distances around that 800-meter ranges. Is what we're wanting to do with these SPRs. Now with the GPRs, again, these guns are built, they should be built around the max effective range of what you want the gun to do. And with 14.5s in that area, you're gonna be around 400 to 500 meters depending on the type of ammo you have. So with my 14.5, we're looking at 400 meters with 62 grain, and an ACOG is definitely suffice for shooting out to that sort of distance. Now when we're stretching this guy out to 600 meters, you guys can see that the ACOG is a fantastic optic, so we can push it a little bit, but I'm not PIDing anything. I know the target's there, so I'm able to hit it, but that's about it.
Yeah, the ACOG is obviously not a problem on man-sized targets or the full-size C zones that we're shooting here, but when we're going to shoot gongs, like we demonstrated on the last sort of test evaluation that we did, that's where the wheels start to fall off on an LPVO, a 1-6, or even this 1-8, versus something like an ACOG. And with something that has adjustable parallax, with something that we can dial on much easier and see our impacts when there is wind and have some dirt behind the target maybe that we can see impacts with. It's just going to make a big difference running a larger scope. But the thing that I want to point out is a lot of you guys watching this, and I've already seen a lot of people comment on the long range videos we've done, is this is too expensive to get into. And there's a barrier to entry, which is the price of optics and rangefinders and kestrels and stuff like that. And the answer is yes, it is very expensive to get into some of this stuff if you want to go all the way to the top with some of the equipment. With that said, a starting place that most people actually need to be looking at is take your current rifle, your PSA, your Sons of Liberty, your BCM upper, your Colt 6920, like whatever it happens to be, and are you actually like stretching the limits of that particular rifle that you own? Are you actually grouping that gun at 100 meters? Are you actually like good enough at shooting that you're being held back by that equipment, because most shooters out there are not shooting enough or training enough to necessarily need to pursue an SPR when they can barely shoot their standard 16-inch gun with a red dot to begin with. And I want to reference a shooting standard that the Army Sniper School does at the beginning of their program. They have their students come out. They set up 5 of these. It's roughly this size. I think it's a larger piece of paper even. And this is their standard zeroing target at 25 meters for their standard M4A1s. And what they want students to do is to shoot a 5-round group into this 4-centimeter circle here in the center 3 out of 5 times. They want every student at the 25-meter line to be shooting with iron sights into here, and they want to see 3 groups. And if they don't see that, they kick out the student.
Right to jail.
If the student can't demonstrate a basic understanding of shooting consistently, sight alignment, you know, stance in the prone position, and just being able to shoot somewhat accurately, like this is not a super difficult standard, they jettison students that way before moving into more complicated stuff relating to long range. And when I heard about this, it's called the shoot-in, I was like, that's great. That's what most civilians should actually be like looking at before trying to buy these crazy guns, because I've seen it quite a lot. Lots of dudes out there who buy Knight's Armament rifles, Night Force 1-8 scopes, like really fancy stuff, and their guns aren't even zeroed. They can barely shoot a group to begin with, and they're trying to plank around with these highly expensive firearms, and they just can't use the basic firearms to begin with. So the takeaway from this video, I hope, is that you guys go, hey, you know, Lucas and Brandon are able to take an ACOG rifle out to 600, a 1-8 gun, and they're able to do some things. That's super cool. What did they do in order to do this? And what we did in order to do this is a lot of basics and fundamentals at the 100-meter line, shooting bullseyes, zeroing guns, like trying to zero properly, shooting good groups so we know we have a good zero. The basic drills that we do on standard USPSA targets. Like if we can't do any of that stuff, there's no way any of this is going to work out. And arguably we had plenty of failures out here in both like forgetting to dial properly, or maybe not enough recoil management to call hits in the dirt, just things like that that we're still working on with our long range proficiency, because it is slightly different and the equipment's a little bit different than just running around with a gun with an ACOG, holding on man-sized targets and getting good hits, which is cool that a standard carbine like this with an ACOG, you can hand it to the average person, and if you're shooting man-sized targets and they know roughly the distance of that target, they can get combat effective hits. Like that's why we really like the ACOG. It's just a product, it's an optic that you can hand to people, and they can do pretty decent work with it without fully understanding like mills and manually ranging targets and like all this other crazy stuff. So that's the main thing for me is that I really want to encourage, is that you guys are making sure you have all the basics and the fundamentals down, and you're maximizing the equipment you already have before going and buying all this other crazy stuff. And I've definitely gone back and forth on, sometimes I'll buy all the things before I know what I'm doing, and then other times I maybe spend too long doing the same thing over and over, and I could actually be leveling up. So I don't know, you have any other thoughts?
No, I think you nailed it. I know some of you guys are probably wondering how these guns actually perform, because we didn't show groups or anything like that quite yet. We're going to continue shooting these guns. We're going to do an Armory YouTube channel on those SPRs there. We'll probably throw in a third one maybe, and then we're going to compare them to these guns and maybe a couple others in the Army, just to show the difference in accuracy. So I will say this 14.5 BCM was brand new out of the box when we started this video, and it's about 2 MOA, and that's with 62 grain, and that's shooting with an ACOG. So if we bagged it, put a bipod on it, shot some match ammo, maybe it would be better. I will say some of these standard barrels actually don't shoot better with match ammo. They're generally about the same. It's really dependent on the grain rather than the precision, you know, the type of round it's shooting. But with those SPRs, like Lucas said, that one, the Munition Works came from Munition Works with a 0.49 MOA test target, which is extremely impressive. That's like bolt gun level accuracy. And then this gun, I'm shooting under 0.8 MOA, but we're gonna confirm that, get really good groups and show that, because we're also shooting through a lot of Mirage right now, so.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, go follow the Armory channel. That's where we're doing more deep dives on the equipment, and we're keeping the content on this channel to the concepts, the philosophy, the demonstration of skill, and we're going into the nitty-gritty on the T.REX Armory channel. We hope you guys learned something from this video and that you are inspired to get out there and train, and we'll see you guys next time.